jump right into it?
Let's go, man. Let's go.
All right, so this week, one of the headlines, Monday, I was watching the MMA Hour, and GSP was supposed to be a surprise guest. So I was like, all right, I'm down. Maybe he's going to announce I'm going to be fighting Robbie Lawler. Or maybe he's going to announce, oh, it's Nick Diaz. Nope. He goes on there, he goes, Ariel, I'm a free agent. What's your take on this, Ted? Did this catch you off guard? What's your take on it?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it did catch me off guard. I mean, I was thinking, and I might have done a video on this, I was thinking maybe Anderson Silva, the fight that we've been wanting to see for years now. You know, I think we might have talked about this last week. You know, it's kind of the Mayweather-Pacquiao kind of a thing. And, but yeah, I was stunned. I was stunned. And I couldn't even get through my video. I made a video immediately after I learned about it, and I was just like, there's just, I don't know. My head was exploding. But yeah, so he's a free agent, so he says, and kind of like the Jose Aldo issue, this is he's bargaining here. He's negotiating. It's a tactic that he's using.
Well, because in the interview, if you listen to it, there were a couple of things where he was like, you know, I agreed with Fertitta on a few of these things, which, you know, were totally fine, but I'm not going to cross that line. That's for the lawyer to handle. But yeah, keep going. I just wanted to point that out.
So I was just showing up. The Wonder Boy's like, oh, I'm getting huge. So look at the. Sorry. Anyway. Yeah. So all right. To look back at the history of it, GSP was saying he was negotiating with the UFC before they made the sale, and he was saying things were going great, things were going well, and they had just about worked out the whole thing with, you know, because he had GSP when he was with the UFC before, he had big sponsors. You remember?
Yeah.
Like Under Armour and who else did they have? They have Gatorade maybe.
A bunch.
What's that?
He had so many, man, and he must have been making millions.
Blue chip sponsors, right?
Yeah.
So that's a huge chunk of change that he's missing now because of the whole Reebok deal. So he wanted to, and that's probably where we got the whole 10 million. Remember how we thought somebody was saying, oh, he wants 10 million.
Yes.
If in fact that's true, it kind of makes sense because GSP's going, well, you're going to need to compensate me properly because I'm losing, because I can't have these guys sponsor me anymore. So this is the number that I came up with, right? And so they were working through that just about, and then the UFC was sold. The Fertitta sold to WME IMG, and then shit went down the drain. And he said, you know, talks kind of fell through. So then his lawyers kind of decreed, they kind of made they stipulated to WME IMG, they said, okay, you've got until X date to get GSP.
And they waited till the 11th hour, the 11th and a half hour, so to say, to even give him.
And they offered him Robbie Lawler.
Mm-hmm.
They offered him Robbie Lawler, but the last we heard from Robbie Lawler, he had pulled out of his 205 fight with Donald Cerrone. So yeah. GSP's like, I don't know about that. I'm not sure I believe that. And so that's not. He didn't believe that it was a real. They didn't take it seriously.
Exactly.
So and you violated our stipulation. Forget it. We declare him a free agent. So the question is all this or any of this going to hold up in court if they go to court?
So the one thing I'm wondering, and I gave somebody a huge props on this, they tweeted out, they're treating CM Punk like a princess, hooking him up with fight, letting him take his time, and yet you have GSP on the side, who was one of the people who built the empire, that led your forces into battle to get people to sit on their couch and dish out their hard-earned money for your company on those pay-per-views back in the day. And he can't get a fight when he says he's ready to fight. He was on his knees, Ted, on UFC Tough Talk, begging Dana White, saying, I really do want to fight. Now, whether you believed it or not, he wanted the fight. They should have made it happen. UFC 206 in Toronto. Why was it like pulling teeth? And do you think that will pull through? Do you think that he really is a free agent? Or is this, once again, power play?
Well, here's the other thing I want to say. According to GSP, the people at WME IMG said that it would take a lot of money to reintroduce him to fans. I don't believe that for a second.
Nope.
Okay, that first of all, that's crap. And if it's not crap, if they truly believe that, then they are so out of touch. They are not fans of the sport. And really, as the Fertittas and Dana White showed us over the years, if you want to do things right, you need to be fans of the sport. And if these guys, if this WMEIMG group, if they're just looking at it for money, and if they're not fans, then they're going to start really screwing up, and they're going to lose people. They're going to lose fighters, and they're going to lose fans of the UFC. I just can't fathom that they would tell GSP that. I mean, have they no concept of who he is and what he's done? Everybody knows who he is. I had somebody on. I'll just tell you this one thing real quick. I had somebody on YouTube telling me, "Hey, you know what? My 8-year-old nephew or whatever knows who he is, and my 80-year-old grandfather knows." Like, people young and old all over the world know who the guy is.
People still think he's fighting. People still ask if BJ Penn is champion. He's one of those names, you know. He's one of those big names. Right. So I have the UFC's official statement, Ted. I know that you must have seen it, but let me just read it to our listeners who don't have their ear to the train tracks like us. The UFC released an official statement directly after the MMA Hour and GSP claiming all this, and he said, and I quote, official statement from the UFC, George St. Pierre remains under an existing agreement with Zuffa LLC as his MMA promoter. Zuffa intends to honor its agreement with St. Pierre and reserves its right under the law to have St. Pierre do the same. What exactly does that mean, Ted?
Oh, well, I mean, I guess they're calling BS on the whole GSP's a free agent.
Free agent.
Thing. And they're kind of, I guess they're kind of drawing a line in the sand, and they're saying, we dare you to try.
That's what I was picking up from it, too. That's exactly what I thought.
Dog dare you. Try it, you know? Because did you see GSP? There was a recent photo of him with the new owner of KSW, which is the big Polish MMA organization.
No,
I took a photo with this guy, you know, like, hey, UFC, look what I'm doing. I'm talking with other people. Na 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 na. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's all, like you say, it's all a big power play. It's a great term, a great phrase to use for it. It's just negotiations and seeing who's going to blink first, I guess.
This is crazy how they're not tending to GSP. You have something so special there that's going to bring in so much money. You have GSP, who everyone knows, like you were just saying, whether it's 8-year-old kids or 8-year-old grandmothers, and that's going to bring so much to the table for super fights. People have been wanting to see GSP, like Woodley. He's calling out GSP. I know everyone was saying, oh, well, it was too soon. Still, the fact of the matter is, you put your champion up against somebody like GSP, who has proven himself over and over again to us. It's a real super fight. So why isn't the UFC making it happen? I don't know. I wonder how this is going to all turn out. Like you said, and like I think, it's more of a power play, just like the Jose Aldo thing.
Yeah, I just hope there's a quick solution, you know, relatively speaking. I just hope it doesn't get dragged out in court for a long time, because, you know, GSP is 35. He's no spring chicken. If he's going to do it, he's got to do it now.
He's saying he's in his prime, that right now is his time. So
right, and
throw the guy a bone. He deserves it.
He's got money. He can afford lawyers, but so does WMEIMG. They've got money. They've got lawyers. You know, let's just, you know, let's come to some type of accord on this thing. Can't we all just get along?
Well, you bring up a really good point, because he is one of the fighters that can stand up and voice out, because he does have that money to dish out if he really wanted to, you know. So yeah. I don't know, man. I hope it really all works out. As for everyone out there who's asking us, you know, if we think that he'd go to Bellator or World Series of Fighting, the answer is no. I don't see GSP doing that. It has nothing to do with that. GSP's a lifer. I don't see him signing with Bellator. I'm sure he got offers this week, though. I'm sure he got offers.
Well, yeah. I guess it was Brett Okamoto who then texted Scott Coker and told him about that. Scott Coker said, "Interesting."
Well, I saw ridiculous tweets about, oh, let's set him up against Roy. That fight's never going to happen. They're friends. It's just
Rory McDonald. Yeah,
it's not going to happen, guys. I'm sorry. All right, so Ted, moving on to the next topic. You brought this up last week. I want to know a little more about it. Shane Carwin gets his knockout with one hand tied or one hand taped to his side. Can you explain to all of our listeners what the hell is going on?
Okay, so it was this past weekend. Jason Ellis, he's a former skateboarder or skate punk, if you will. Also, I think he's delved into kickboxing. I think he may have had like some amateur, maybe even a pro kickboxing bout or two. He's a huge MMA fan. He always has MMA fighters on his show. I think he's actually a close personal friend of Mayhem Miller. And so every year for the past like 13 years, he's had this Ellis mania. I think he's on Sirius XM anyway. So he's got a big following there. Every year he has this, I don't know what you'd call like a freak extravaganza weekend.
Like a Lollapalooza or something, but like for him.
Right, but actually it's for charity. It kind of culminates with this event that they have. I think they had it at the Hard Rock. They have a boxing ring, and then he has all these weird fights. Like I think the co-main event was like 5 dudes blindfolded with shock collars on, trying to box each other. And then Jason Ellis himself was in the main event against Shane Carwin, former UFC interim heavyweight champion Shane Carwin, who actually just recently obtained his release from the UFC. And says he wants to get back to fighting. And by the way, he looked huge.
Yeah, he did.
I mean, Jason Ellis is not a big dude. I think he goes about 5'8", 5'9", 180, something like that. But Carwin totally dwarfed him. The stipulation was that Carwin would have to have his right arm duct taped to his body. So he only had his left. That was it. That was all he had. And still, he ended up knocking out Jason Ellis in the second round. And it wasn't, he didn't even put his whole body behind it. It was just kind of one of these, just a short hook.
It was a doink?
Maybe the ear or thereabouts, just a short hook, and that's it. Ellis was down and out.
So, Ted, can I bring one thing up that everyone needs to know? I typed in, to get all like the images for the show, I typed in Shane Carwin, and your picture legit popped up of like videos that you've done. Yeah, I took a screenshot of it, and it's actually up for everybody right now.
I can't see it, but I'll take your word for it, yeah.
I type in on Google, I type in Shane Carwin versus Jason Ellis, and your picture pops up of you in your car doing like a news brief on it. There it is right there. You guys.
Okay. That's insane. I mean, it did all right. I got over 1,000 views on it or whatever, but it's a cool thing that happened. It goes to charity, so that's awesome. And Jason Ellis has been a fervent supporter of the sport for years. And so I remember there was a guy around where I live who actually went out to that a couple of years ago. He and his buddies, they kind of did a hangover type of thing. It was like 4 dudes, and they go to Vegas, and they went for Ellis Mania a couple of years ago. And because this guy that I know was a big skateboarding guy as well, so that's how he knew Jason Ellis.
Is he signed? Who's he signed with right now?
No one. I haven't heard that he's signed with anybody. We could see him in Bellator. World Series of Fighting's got some. You know what? We should have. I don't know. I haven't read up on that. I know they've got some issues.
I brought it up on the podcast for everybody that's wondering about that. I brought it up. Ray Sefo went on the MMA Hour and dissolved 2 of the events to kind of invest into the New York event. If anyone wants to catch up on that, it's on the podcast. Check it out after the show.
I don't know if World Series of Fighting would be a smart move, but there's Bellator, there's Ryzen, KSW, which is if you've ever seen any of their shows in Poland, they get a big ass crowd over there for their shows. So there's that one. So there's a number of options for Shane Carwin besides the UFC, who said that they don't need him, which I was shocked about. I was shocked. The heavyweight division, you and I have talked about this before. It's a pretty thin division, probably the thinnest not in terms of girth, in terms of how many people they have in the division. In terms of the roster, it's not very deep at all. So why would you get rid of a guy like Shane Carwin, you know, who you know, was the interim heavyweight champion, who gave Brock Lesnar all he could handle, you know, a knockout artist, for God's sake. He's not a boring ass, you know, dude. He is an exciting fighter.
All right, Ted, in other news this week, we had some huge fight. Well, not that huge, but pretty interesting fight announcements. Uriah Faber coming back. What do you think about this? Uriah Faber coming back to fight.
Well, all right. Uriah Faber, he seems to be in kind of this gatekeeper role, don't you think? Like, I don't know that he's ever going to challenge for the title again.
He's just making that check, it seems.
Just making the money. You know, he's having fun. He's in good health, and he doesn't want to quit.
Is Brad Pickett a good fight for him, though? I love this fight for Uriah Faber. I think he can take Pickett out, and it's not going to look pretty for Pickett after this fight if he doesn't pick up this win.
Oh, I mean, it's going to be an exciting fight, but I mean, Faber just kind of seems to be in a holding pattern, don't you think? Like kind of. He's just kind of in a limbo kind of thing. He's not going to challenge for the title because his protege Cody Garbrandt is more than likely going to challenge for it. But he's not ready to give it up just yet. You know, for some people it's so hard. As far as I understand it, they have this intense competitive edge, and they don't ever lose that. So it's so hard for them to walk away from the sport. You know, like Chuck Liddell had to be told by Dana White, "Sorry, Chuck, I'm not giving you another fight." And Chuck had like 3 or 4 knockouts in his in his many fights. You know, he wasn't ready. He's like, "Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play." You know what I mean? And Dana White's like, "Nah, dude, you're getting knocked out too much. I can't." So fighters sometimes, I think they always think that they've got at least one more in them. You know what I mean? No matter what. And I guess, you know, Faber, I mean, I don't know him. I can't see inside his head, but he just isn't ready to give it up just yet. And the cash is pretty good too.
Anyone out there who knows me, Ted, has been listening to the podcast, following us for a little while, knows that I'm a big Uriah Faber fan. I was a huge fan of him in high school, but he's just not bringing it to the table anymore. However, in defense of Uriah Faber, he's somebody that you can't just throw in there under a 10th ranked fighter. I think he's still a top 10 ranked fighter. Mm-hmm. So you can't just throw anyone in there against him. If you went to Bellator, World Series of Fighting, he would most likely be champion.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Or yeah, at the very least, challenge for the title. I mean, we've seen guys like Ben Henderson, you know, think that they can clean up in Bellator, and not quite the way it seems. Not so easy. But
not so easy there, Benson.
Right, not so fast. But anyway, no, I mean, Faber would do well in those other organizations. But yeah, I guess right now in his career, he's kind of in the UFC. He's kind of a gatekeeper, you know.
Mike Platinum Perry versus Alan Jouban.
What do you think of Perry? This is a guy that's there's a lot of talk about this guy. What's your take on him?
All right, so yeah, I listened to his interview this week on MMA Hour, and he's a golden interview. I love the way that he brings the interview. He brings up some pretty funny subjects, saying that platinum telescopes a god and all this. He's getting a lot of publicity. Alan Jouban, though, is a tough matchup for anybody out there. We just saw Alan Jouban go up against Bilal Muhammad, but we did not forget Bilal's name after that. Even though Alan Jouban won that fight, he put up one hell of a fight against Alan Jouban. After that fight, though, Alan, we didn't know what was going to happen with him. Mike Perry is a perfect guy for him to go in there and fight. But the problem is, Mike Perry thought that he was getting somebody like a Matt Brown. So I don't know if he's underestimating him in his mind, but better watch out. Alan Jouban's no joke. Better watch out for those cartwheel kicks.
Yeah, both of these guys are exciting fighters. Did you see the exchange on Twitter? Perry already
F your face up, right?
Yeah. Perry already started the trash talk. I mean, you've got Perry. He grew up in Flint, Michigan, and then I think he moved to Florida. You know, kind of a hard scrabble life. You know what I mean? Not the easiest. And I think he looks at Jouban, who I don't know much about his background, but I think Perry just looking at the guy's like, oh, look at this guy, he's a model. You know, he's kind of a pretty boy. So, you know, Perry was saying, I'm gonna fuck your pretty little face up, and then and Joe Bond says, you forgot to say no homo. And so then Perry tweets back, I'm gonna make you my bitch. And then somebody else jumped in and said, you forgot to say no homo again. I mean, you know, there's some funny stuff going on there, but yeah, Perry. There's a lot of people talking about him. You know, when you look on the various message boards, the MMA message boards, there's a lot of talk about this guy. People are very excited, you know, because of his what he does in the weigh-ins. Remember the first weigh-in that he did, where he took his hand away. Don't try to friend, boy! Ah! Remember that?
Yeah, we were talking about this last week.
Right, and then the next one with hot chocolate, and he's eating the chocolate bar. He says, I'm going to eat you alive, boy.
Yep.
I mean, that's exciting shit right there. That's exciting stuff. People like that. People eat that up. And not only that, but then he delivers in the cage. He's knocking fools out. So he, you know, in a short amount of time, kind of like a Conor McGregor, you know, in a sense, there's a lot of talk about him in a short amount of time. So
listen, if he can pick up, if Mike Platinum Perry can pick up this win over Alan Jouban, he's going to get the respect from so many people. Bilal Muhammad tried, it didn't happen. That was my point. What I was trying to bring up. I think he's underestimating him because Bilal, it was his debut against Alan Jouban, and he started tearing him up in that third round. So I don't know, man. It's going to be a great fight. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's UFC on Fox 22 in Sacramento, California, December 17th. That's when that is. There's some other fights on that we learned about. That the Faber Pickett fight is on that card. And let's see. Well, the main event is Paige Van Zandt versus Michelle Waterson,
which we actually broke last week during our show live. I didn't even know it was official, Ted. We were literally doing it live and stumbled across it, and we're like, oh wow. Paige Van Zandt versus the Karate Hottie. That is great, man. I'm so excited for that one. Man, but people better watch out, man. I think Karate Hottie might have Paige here. I don't know. It's going to be a great fight for her here if she can get that win over Paige.
Okay, so a little bit of history here. Let's go back to June 21st. I think it was right around when the sale was made public. Dana White said on the first episode of remember the podcast that they set up between it's Matt Serra and
the Unfiltered UFC Unfiltered.
UFC Unfiltered. So Dana White was instrumental in getting that podcast off the ground and everything, and of course he put himself in, or somebody said, okay, well Dana White's going to be the first guest. So Matt Serra and the other guy, I'll just call him the other guy, they asked Dana White, they said, is this like our first and last? Do we need to be worried about getting pink slips here or what? You know, because you just sold the company. And he said, you know, don't worry about stuff like that. Listen, everybody who works for me, let this be the last thing you worry about. Yeah. And now, fast forward to this week, where we've got news that, let's see, thanks to Ariel Helwani, we have news that UFC Canada, the majority of the Toronto staff laid off. UFC in China, half the office let go. Executives like Gary Cook, Marshall Zalesnik, and Ken Dinger, gone. Totally 15% of the total staff are on the chopping block.
I saw last night they released the social media crew, some of the people in the social media crew for the UFC. It's like, wow, what the hell's going on?
So I mean, you know, people have speculated. Well, you know what? This is
something you got to expect when there's a new boss in the building.
Right. There's a tightening of the ranks. They're getting rid of
trimming the hedges.
Trimming the hedges, if you want to call it that. It's a shame, really.
It is.
First of all, I don't. Dana White shouldn't have said that. First of all, how could he have known? You know, if he's relinquishing control of the company, I mean, he's not the owner anymore. I mean, he's got some type of ownership a little bit, but I mean, generally speaking, the WME IMG people are running the show now, right? So
Yeah.
if he's relinquishing control, how could he possibly say, everybody who works for me, let this be the last thing you worry about, i.e., getting let go? Ridiculous. I can't trust anything this guy says anymore.
No, we can't. We never could.
I know, but and maybe it took me longer than most because I wanted to believe the guy, but time and time again, he's just shown that he says whatever comes to his mind. I just take the opposite. Whatever he says, I take the opposite. I believe the opposite. But people have speculated that this is, and we know this when you have new owners, these things happen. But the WME IMG is going to move their own people in. It's kind of like when you get a new president. New president says, okay, everybody, out the door you go. I bring in my people. I bring in my own cabinet. I bring in all my own people to head up all the various divisions and everything. And that's what WME IMG is doing. That they're fully within their rights to do that. It still sucks. The other thing that I read was that it's a website called MMA Supremacy. They say that a number of UFC the number of UFC events that are held internationally, that's going to decrease. Now, you and I talked last week about the Philippines. Remember that?
Yeah, that was
and
a good
I'm speculating that probably the reason why they just pulled the plug on the whole thing after BJ Penn said, "Oh, I've got a rib injury," was because the Philippines said, "Well, we're going to drug test everybody that gets off the plane."
Yep.
Everybody in the UFC entourage, we're going to drug test everybody. And I said, well, that's probably why they pulled the plug on it. But it kind of also makes sense when you hear that about they're going to decrease their events internationally. So they ran into one little problem with the Philippines. They said, forget it then. They don't care. Apparently, WME IMG wants to focus on domestic events, just events in the United States. Just events in the United States. It sounds like more so than anywhere else. They're going to cut down on other things.
All right, so this week, Chael Sonnen, it was announced, Ted, going to be fighting Tito Ortiz. Now, I did a poll on my Twitter page. Everyone can check that out. I asked, who do you guys think is going to win this fight? Ted, people are tearing each other apart right now on social media. What's your take on it? And then I'll give you mine.
Well, let's see. First of all, I was a little. I think I was a little shocked that Chael Sonnen, another guy that couldn't make it work with the UFC, and they said, "There's the door," right? And they don't seem, the guys who are maybe a little bit older, like a Shane Carwin, they don't seem to have a problem with that. So he goes to Bellator. It's kind of the who was it? Pat Miletich. He said, the Geritol posse. Guys that are older. Guys that are older should fight guys who are older. Like Ken Shamrock fighting Hoist Gracie. Tito Ortiz fighting Stephan Bonner.
Yeah, it works out perfect in that sense.
Fighting Tito Ortiz. It works. You can't put an older guy like Tito Ortiz in against a young buck who's 25, 26, 27 years old, and is nearing their peak or just about at their peak. It's just not fair. So I don't have a problem with older fighters fighting. Some people are like, they're used up, they're washed up, they're slower. Yeah, but as long as they still got the drive, and as long as they're not suffering from anything, as long as they're healthy, I say great, let's do it.
Yeah, man, and it's perfect for Bellator too. I think this is a perfect fight for them. This is the fight that everyone wanted to really happen. I mean, what other fight out there did you really think was going to be the debut fight for Chael Sonnen here? I mean, come on.
People were talking about Wanderlei Silva.
Yeah, that's true. I mean,
those guys were supposed to fight on the finale, or they coached the Ultimate Fighter. But the thing with that is, okay, so Wanderlei Silva already has a fight booked for New Year's Eve against Cro Cop at the Ryzen Openweight Grand Prix, right? So then I believe Scott Coker said we're probably not going to see Sonnen versus Silva until the summer of 2017. It makes sense. Silva finishes up with Crow Cop, and Sonnen fights Ortiz. Maybe they each have another fight in between just to kind of tide them over, and then they fight in the summer.
Now, Tito hasn't been fighting since his last fight against Liam McGeary, where he was actually doing pretty good in that fight. He was even on top and got submitted in top control in like mount. So I'm excited for this fight. I think that Tito's going to take it, though. I think this is a bad matchup for Chael at 205, right? It's at 205.
Yeah, it should be. I mean, Chael Sonnen has fought at 205. He's fought at 185.
And he's not that good at 205, man. I just don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess maybe the weight cut is more difficult for him as he gets older. You know, he used to walk around at about 217, 220, and then cut to 185. So yeah, I mean, he'll probably be at a weight and strength disadvantage to Tito Ortiz, but I mean, they're both wrestlers. You know, so some people out there are worried. It's just going to be a wrestle. You know, they're just going to be wrestling, just going to be laying on each other, laying prey the whole time. But I mean, Sonnen is not. I mean, they both have serviceable striking skills. Do you remember? And I mentioned, I think it was today I mentioned this in one of my videos. Chael Sonnen, when he took on Anderson Silva the first time, how many times did he drop Anderson Silva? 2-3 times in that fight, right?
Yep.
Now people say, but he was on. He
was winning. He was beating Anderson Silva the entire fight. He was the one person to come the closest to beating him up until the last minute of that fight.
Do you remember? I forget what round this was in. Okay, Chael tries to kick Anderson Silva. Anderson Silva grabs his heel, right? Chael twists his body and does a roll to get out of that. I was like, oh my god, that like blew my mind when I saw that move. I was like, wow.
The build-up, the epic build-up to that fight, all the shit talk that was going down. One of my favorite rivalries right there. He was just saying all these things about Anderson Silva, and Silva luckily won that fight off of his back again, right? That was off of his back that he won that.
What do you mean, luckily?
Well, he was getting his ass kicked the entire time.
Lucky for him, yeah.
So
yeah, no,
we saw a completely different turnaround in that second fight, though.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, yeah, Chael was he on TRT or no? He was on something illegal. He wasn't even on TRT. He got busted for steroids after that first Anderson fight, I believe.
But just epic fights that we'll always remember. And now we have Tito Ortiz versus Chael Sonnen. Now, Ted, everyone out there is wondering, why didn't this match ever go down in the UFC? Can you explain that to everybody?
I mean, I would guess that. I mean, they were in different weight classes.
And so this timing was off.
How much of an overlap was there between Chael Sonnen and Tito Ortiz? I mean, because Ortiz's last fight in the UFC was
doing awful at the end of his run there at the UFC, but he
that was against Lyoto Machida. That was his last fight in the UFC, and Dana White was pissed at him for some reason, and it basically was kind of like a hit job. He gave him a difficult fight on his way out.
Yeah.
Although Tito caught Lyoto Machida in a triangle, and nearly had him with that, but. I mean, but the rest of the fight was Machida actually ragdolling Ortiz.
I mean, Ted, I always forget there's people out there that have no idea about any of this, what we're talking about, and I wish we can show them. And the only way that you guys can really do that is if you get UFC Fight Pass and check out some of the older seasons of Ultimate Fighter when it really started, like Dana and Tito's rivalry towards one another. I mean, at one point, before I jump around, I think it was like season 3 of Ultimate Fighter, right? Tito Ortiz versus Ken Shamrock, and then or Chuck Liddell, right?
What's that? Which?
I think no. It was Shamrock versus Tito Ortiz in the Ultimate Fighter season 3. They were coaches, and then there just became this whole rivalry. Dana just really hated Tito Ortiz, and even said to Chuck Liddell if he beat Tito Ortiz, he would write him a personal check. And that happened.
Chuck Liddell were good buds and still are. And yeah, Dana just could not stand Ortiz. At one point, they were going to have a boxing match.
Well, he's saying that he owes him money still and all this.
Do you remember that? The two of them were going to box.
Dana backed out.
Right. They did like a or I don't know who did or whatever, but they did a whole documentary on it and everything. There was the build up. The two of them were going to have a boxing match because Dana White used to be an amateur boxer and a boxer-size instructor before he noticed that the UFC was for sale and he went to his childhood
Out
friend
in Boston, right? Right? Isn't Dana from Boston?
Yeah, Boston, Massachusetts. So oh hey, just going over here to the chat room. Some people were not sure. I failed to mention the date, or maybe I did, but Bellator 170. Sammy's saying, yeah, Bellator 170, January 21st in Los Angeles. It's at the Forum, which is I think where the LA Lakers used to play. But anyway, so yeah, it is official. Because there was some confusion. People were thinking maybe Sonnen hadn't agreed to the fight, but it looks like it is set.
All right, so make sure you guys subscribe down below. This was episode number 18. Ted, you want to give your tags really quick as we close out the show?
Yeah, me, Ted Czech, TEDCZECH, like the Czech Republic, and I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. Please join me on YouTube. That's kind of my main thing. As Eddie said, I do lots of little videos, and I try to keep up with the news, give you my view, and then put the issue out there and ask for everybody else's views, because everybody, I value everybody's opinion.
Also, the Pure Evil MMA podcast, guys, just dropped. Make sure you check that out for your morning gym, your morning jog, whether you're on your way to work, whether you're going to bed. I mean, we got people all around the world. That's the beauty of MMA. We had a great show, Ted. Thanks for tuning in to episode number 18 of Evil and Intoxicated. We will see you next Wednesday night at 10 p.m. because we do this every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Have a great night, everybody. I'm Evil Eddie from Pure Evil MMA, ProWrestlingAuthority.com. Behave yourselves.